All right, welcome back to our Worship Summit Live video series.
Next up, we have the digital pastor, Mr. Seth Haberman.
Seth is joining us from his church in Washington State. He's going to give us a behind-the-scenes tour of his video production system. He's one of the more technical pastors, I would say, in house of worship area, and you're going to learn a lot.
If you're used to wearing a lot of hats in your church, this is a good one for you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Seth is joining us from Washington. How you doing?
Yep, you got it right. Yeah, so we actually have two churches, one in Spokane and one in Moses Lake, and so I pastor the one in Moses Lake, but we're so excited to be here today.
So Seth is a leader in a lot of different spaces. I'm so excited for him to share his views from being a kind of a tech leader and a worship leader in kind of together. It has kind of become the digital pastor. I know you, Seth, from NAB and the vMix booth, and together we've hung out and met many different times at the Streaming Idiots meetups in Las Vegas, but other times as well. And I'm so excited to finally be able to talk to you about what you're up to at your church and what it's like to be a worship leader that also is keen in your understanding of technology, because you've been a leader with vMix for so long, and you've integrated that into what you're doing at your church. I just can't wait to hear. I would say you're really on the cutting edge when it comes to being a pastor who also understands the tech side. So I think a lot of us are going to have a lot of questions for you, but let's let you go ahead and share, what you've been up to over the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess first of all, like Paul said, my name is Seth, and I pastor here in Moses Lake, Washington. And we have a church of about 30 to 50 people, which seems like a common trend of people that are watching online. We also have a Christian school of about 70 kids, so a huge amount of my time is spent actually in the classroom. So I teach in a Christian school here on our campus, and I'm in the classroom all day, and I love it. So I'm actually wearing a lot of hats throughout the week, pastoring, teaching our Christian school kids, doing things on the side. I'm married. My wife's name, sorry, my delay is hard to talk with this on. My wife's name is Judith, and we have three beautiful children, Hannah, Sarah, and Rachel. And I'm not like a proud dad at all or anything, but I have a wonderful family here in Moses Lake, and we just got a lot going on. So I basically started out leading worship in Spokane. I grew up as a pastor's kid in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and was just in the church all the time. I love music. I love tech. I love people. And so it kind of converges a lot of different things together and makes for an interesting position. So not only am I pastoring, but my wife and I are also over the media ministry here, which we're wanting to get delegated. I really got a lot out of that class a couple sessions ago on casting that vision in a small church setting. But I'm really blessed to be able to do that in a small setting. But a couple things about me, like I said, worship leader, pastor, Christian school teacher, and like you mentioned, Paul, also doing NAB. I think this year my wife and I will be at the NAB booth with vMix, and I think it's going to be our about 6th year that we've been with vMix down there in Vegas, and have a wonderful time meeting a bunch of you. Many of you that are watching right now might come down to Vegas and see us. If you are coming to NAB this year, definitely stop by, come and say hi, and we'd love to be able to meet you. But we do vMix every year, and I also have a YouTube channel called The Digital Pastor, and one of the things that was birthed out of was really trying to help churches with practical advice that they could use for their church, right? We do some reviews on some different equipment, actually working on a review right now of an auto tracking camera system, which is pretty cool. But just trying to enable churches to be able to utilize things that they might not know about, right? They might have the means or even a budget to do something, but they just don't have any information on how to do that. So I'd encourage you, if you're not already subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're interested in that, it's just The Digital Pastor. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my setup really quickly here. So I'm actually in the sanctuary. If it sounds a little bit echoey, I'm in the sanctuary of our church right now. I'm just going to cut over. Here you can see our stage. Got a little LED, little setup that we got there going. And then let me cut around. You can kind of see here, we got like our audio setup. We got the X32 up here. Fantastic camera. I highly recommend. It is the Sony FDR AX100. It's got a 4K output, fantastic image sensor, just very good. We got our ProPresenter machine, and then we got our, sorry if I'm making you dizzy here. We got our vMix machine, and then we got our printer for printing all of our music. I haven't transferred to iPads yet. So we got our setup over here, and one of the things that I think might have been covered in a previous session, and I really want to encourage you, one of the pet peeves of mine when I watch live streams is audio. I just want to touch on this just before we totally jump in. I know Jake had mentioned a little bit about Dante kind of coming out of this last session, but I want to encourage you to grab, if you have the X32, I know lots of churches have the X32. It's a wonderful, wonderful board. But if you have the X32 that's got with the card expansion, they actually have either you can get a Dante card, which will allow you to get your audio over to your vMix computer or your streaming computer very easily, or Dante actually makes, which is really great, it's an AES EBU port, right? So on the back of your X32, if you have one, there is a microphone XLR cable plug in the back, and it's actually not a microphone cable, it's a digital signal called AES EBU. And Dante actually makes a little plug. It's like $120, and you can plug it right into that AES EBU port and then plug it into your network. And then vMix can actually bring that audio signal right into your whatever you're streaming to, OBS or vMix, whatever. And it's $120. And here's the great thing. I see lots of churches, when they take their audio from their board, they actually keep it analog, right? Just as a great tip, you always want to keep your signal chain as clean and pure as you can. So if you have the ability to keep your signal chain from digital from your board all the way to your broadcasting software, if you can keep it digital, then that's going to sound way better. You're going to get rid of any buzzes. If you got like a ground hum, oh my gosh, I could tell you stories of trying to track down ground hums, and I think many of you probably suffer from that. But try to keep your signal chain digital. And play around with some Dante. The second thing is your audio levels. I'm just going to show you. I got my vMix session in here real quick. One of the great things about vMix is its use of VST plugins. So one of the things that I got right here on my microphone, I'm going to come down here onto my Yeti microphone. And over here in my plugins, I've actually got a fantastic plugin called Max Volume. And this is one of my favorite plugins because it's a great just plug and play for your volume, right? So many of you out there that are streaming and having a hard time getting maintaining constant audio levels, Max Volume is a great tool that allows you to basically like set a threshold that says, as long as your audio level doesn't get above this, you're going to boost it up this much gain. And it's also got a downwards compressor as well. But it just has the ability to keep things super level. So we actually send our entire mix from our X32 through the Max Volume on our master channel, as well as we use the L3 LL. That's a low latency. You want to keep your latency low. And then it boosted just a little bit more with some extra volume. So those are just a couple little quick tidbits on some tech things that I was thinking about before coming into this session. But I wanted to encourage everyone, before I jump into some of the other things that we're working on, is just in the area of technology. I think coming in my past experiences, both in the pastoral side of things and really the nitty-gritty technology side of things, I just had a couple things I wanted to share with you. Is number one is do not compare yourselves. I think I'm like one of the kings of comparison, and as a pastor and as a media person, I can compare myself very quickly. I can say, hey, I wish I could preach like Furtick or this guy or that guy, and I can get really discouraged. Or man, I wish my video was as good as that. Or I wish, just don't compare yourselves, right? There are thousands of churches around the world and around the United States that are doing exactly what you're doing, and God did not create you to do what they're doing. God created you to do what you are doing in your church. So don't get discouraged or don't compare yourselves to other churches, because that's a trick of the enemy. Don't compare yourselves. Number two is don't get discouraged. Luckily I have the nice ability to be able to move things very quickly. So not only am I pastoring this church, but I'm also in charge of media, which the cool thing is that if I want to do something, I can move it really quickly. But you might be in a situation where you need to work through like committees and you got to vote on things and just do different things that have a lot of roadblocks in front of you. Don't get discouraged, right? Media is a huge department. Audio is a huge department. Streaming is a huge department, which sometimes things take time. And just trust in God and don't get discouraged. Just keep being a faithful servant in your departments, because there's a lot of you that are probably watching the summit thinking, man, I'm so frustrated. Like I'm trying to get this to work and it doesn't work, or I'm trying to get this pastor on board, hey, we need to start, we need to do this, or we need to do that. Just don't get discouraged. Keep plowing along. Be faithful. Trust in God. And then lastly is keep this on Jesus. Sorry, I didn't need to get to my cam. Keep your focus on Jesus. One of the big things that I see in media is oftentimes we as media people, we can get really into the nitty gritty, right? I have a story once that this LED wall, here I'm really into technology. This LED wall I actually created and did very, very late one night on a Saturday night. And one of the things that I did is I was up very late. I mean, this is probably one of the times that I spent the entire night working on this project. And when I literally just finished the project, the first thing that I did is I looked up at the clock and it said 6 a.m. So I had spent the entire night going through the entire process of creating this LED wall. And then I realized that I had stayed up all night. So my encouragement for you is to not make the focus about anything other than Jesus, right? Especially as tech people, we can get caught up in cables and connections and feeds and all of these different things. But in reality, the end of the day, Jesus is the main focus. And don't get distracted by technology, by cables, by connections. One of the things that I've done in my video previously is talking about the media booth force field. And the media booth force field is basically the media booth, in my opinion, can end up being one of the most spiritually deteriorating departments of the church, because we're always on key. We're always focusing, is this working? Is that working? Did we get that cue? And then we end up not getting spiritually fed at all. And then once we're done looking at everything, then we might pop up our phone, or it's just very easy to be distracted. And we almost think that like, hey, we're in this like separate part of the church. I don't really have to pay attention. So make sure that you're taking notes, you're listening to your pastor, that your spirit and your heart is set on your pastor's vision from the Word of God. And just don't let the media booth force field get you, right? It's easy to just tank spiritually when you're just focusing on all the tech and it's just draining. Make sure that you get fed, make sure that you're plugged in, and don't let that be a distraction from what you're doing. But I want to move forward into an app that I created for vMix, actually. Some of you might have it already, but vMix, this isn't, I love vMix. vMix is the best. If you're not using vMix, you got to get vMix. And one of the great things is vMix has an open-ended HTTP API, which means that third parties like myself can create apps for it and control vMix. And so we actually created an app for iPad, which gives you the ability to control your vMix session, which becomes incredibly useful because you can have multiple people running it. So we're just going to jump right into that. But first of all, it's just called the vMix Virtual Control Surface. It's available in the App Store. It's like $5. Go pick it up today. And it makes things really, really easy. So I'm just going to cut here really to our camera here first real quick. So as you can see, this is the app, right? So we have a couple different tabs here in the app. And the first one here, you can see, is this is basically your IP. Right? So you have your IP address of your vMix computer that you get rocking in here, and then you connect, and once you connect, it's going to bring you to your video portion of the mixer. So this is going to look very similar to a broadcast type of a switcher with those real big tactile LED buttons. Here, let me move my mic here a little bit. So this is your video portion of your mixer. We also have an audio portion down here, which we'll jump to here in a second. But just to go over a couple of things, you've got your main body of your app right here, right? So this is going to show me all of my inputs, and it's actually going to take the name of your input, and it's going to pop it up here right in the box, right? So you can see that that's my main Sony camera as number 1, right? And now this actually gives me the option to be able to get up to 48 channels, which is awesome. So if you have a ton of inputs, you can scroll to the side, and this allows you to control what's in vMix. Now I'm gonna be changing some things so you can kind of see, but down here in your preview this is what's going to be showing up in your preview window. So I'm just going to cut to this really quick, but your preview window is basically what's going on over here. This is you queuing up different sources within vMix, and so I can actually, in my app, I can queue up and preview different sources in my vMix app by using that bottom row, right? And now the top row, or excuse me, the center row is going to be your program, which is your output, right? Which is what's going to your live stream. And so I can actually switch through those using this, and it actually gives real-time feedback on what's going on in the app, right? Let's actually find out where my PTZ, there we go. As you're doing this, so if I were to switch a preview right here in vMix, so say I'm previewing a different camera, whoops. So right now I'm previewing camera number 1. If I actually switch to it in number 2, whoops. If I preview a different, let's get back to there. It's going to switch and light up a separate preview icon right there, right? So it's very responsive. So not only can you do your program in your preview, but you can also do your overlays, which is huge. So I've got an input here that's bringing in our text from ProPresenter as a data source. And so I'm actually going to overlay that. And let's see, my title is right here under my lyrics. So I've got my first of my 4 layers selected. And so I can actually turn on my lyrics of my live stream, and I can turn them off, right? And I can select that for any number of things, right? So I could throw an overlay of my lyrics up, then I could go to my second channel and then overlay something else. And I can do that for all 4 of my channels. Also coming down are these 3 function buttons. One of the great things about vMix is the ability to use macros within vMix. And so if you go within the settings menu of vMix, one of the great things you can do is in your shortcuts, where did my window go here? In my shortcuts menu, if I add a shortcut and I have the function down here to be surface F1, F2, F3, and F4, you can use any of these triggers right here and make a custom trigger, a custom macro within vMix. And then these 4 buttons here can trigger those macros, right? The other thing we have over here, we'll just switch in between these couple different cameras. Whoops. Is I've got the T-bar, right? So this T-bar, as you can see, is I can actually do a fade with this T-bar in real time using this T-bar fade function. Whoops. Right, and so I can fade in between different sources using this T-bar. You can also do your automatic take, which would just be kind of like your cut in between the 2 channels on your program and your preview. I can do a fade to black. Come back from my fade to black. I've also got my transitions here, right? These are 4 transitions that basically mirror the transitions that are inside of your vMix session, typically like right down the center here. You can also toggle your streaming, recording, full screen, and external. Like your streaming, you can turn it off and on, your recording off and on, full screen, external. And then on the second tab here is a great audio mixer, right? And so as you are mixing, you can actually see the volumes that are coming in, right? So I can change the volume and watch in real time what is going on with my volume. So as you can see here, like with this volume, this is coming in from my NDI signal. As I turn it up, you can see the volume is going up even though it's muted. And as I turn it down, you can see that the volume is going down as well. So this is really handy, especially when you're working in live scenarios where you're really needing to see where audio is coming in and being able to quickly mix that. And if there's no audio on the channel, one of the things you can do is actually it cuts out all of the tabs and titles. So it doesn't give you a bunch of extra faders and buttons and everything if there's no audio on the channel. And again, you can do that both for audio and video. Then you've got your master up here. You can do your master volume up and down and then control your aux buses as well. So this is just an awesome tool to be able to streamline really your whole workflow of what you're doing in your live streaming scenarios. You know, a lot of times space is tight in your media booth. I mean, this media booth in here is probably a little bit bigger than or somewhat bigger than most, but still it can get cramped, and you can actually get multiple people running multiple ones of these at the same time. So you can actually have one guy running your audio from this app, and then another guy running video from this app as well. So there's just a lot of great tools that you can use or use this for in your live streaming environment, which is just incredibly beneficial. So like I said, it's called the vMix Virtual Control Surface, and it's available in the App Store. And it's just a great tool to be able to integrate some workflow things. But that's really the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today. Want to open it up for some questions from the chat. I'm going to put my earpiece back in. But I really just wanted to try to connect with some of the people and just get some questions. I know that sort of the function that the Lord has me in, both in sort of a pastoral role and heavily involved in a technical aspect, kind of give me a unique perspective. But just Paul, wanted to turn it back to you just for a little bit and kind of see where else you might want to go from here. What, did you lose me?